in the kingdom, if your name was never the one in lights, if you weren't the pastor of the church, would you still be faithful?
We talk about being in alignment with our pastors all the time. Are you in alignment with your spouse?
If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself daily and follow me.
I've got to do ministry in a different way. I don't want to perform for him. I want to partner with him.
Leading Second Camp 2025 for church leaders and team members who lead from the middle, February 26th and 27th in Dallas, Texas. To find out more and to register, go to leadingsecondcamp.com. Welcome to the Leading Second Podcast, a space to help church leaders thrive in the second chair. The Leading Second Podcast releases every Thursday morning, so hit subscribe and share this with your team. Now let's jump into another episode for all of us who lead from the middle. Hello and welcome to the Leading Second Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. It's an honor to have you in this space. If you lead from the middle in any capacity, Leading Second is for you. If you find this episode helpful, I want to encourage you to go to leadingsecond.com/podcast, and there you'll find a downloadable episode guide that we've created for the episode today. Feel free to use it with your team if that would be helpful, and use it to create further discussion around today's topic. And also, it would be very helpful if you help us make some noise about the podcast. You can share it with your team or send it to a friend. And of course, leaving ratings and reviews helps share the message and move the ministry forward. So today, we are sharing an Ask Us Anything panel session from Team Church Conference with a group of our favorite Leading Second leaders. So let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Leading Second Podcast, a space to help church leaders thrive in the second chair. We're grateful that you're joining us today for a podcast segment we're calling Ask Us Anything. My name is Dillon Ritchie. I'm from Coastlife Church, and today we're going to hear from some incredible people. Now let's take our first question.
I have a question. What do you think is the biggest challenge when bringing leaders of this generation today? Maybe it's on team, maybe it's in your church on the leadership team. What do you think is the biggest challenge?
Something we didn't have to deal with 23 years ago was contend with social media. And what I mean by that is in ministry, we couldn't see what anybody else was doing. And so there was so much less comparison. It was there, but it wasn't the same. Because all you knew to do was just put your hand to the plow with what was in front of you. I didn't know if we had a great youth ministry or a terrible youth ministry. I had no clue. It was just what we had. Yeah. And I actually grieve for those days a little bit because I miss those days when because I think now we can get on social media and we got a lot of young leaders that are really discontent because they can see somebody else's highlight reel and they're comparing it to what they woke up to this morning. And I just think that's something we have to really contend with in ministry is guard our hearts. So I think younger leaders, I would try to help them through comparison.
That's beautiful.
I do want to say, my husband and I were talking about politics this morning because as we do. No, I'm just kidding. We actually usually don't. I don't like talking about politics a lot, but we're kind of noticing how the middle seems to be disappearing. And people kind of are tending to go
to the
extremes a lot more. And I was thinking about that. And in the context of young people, I feel like we have to speak what the truth is and trust that the Holy Spirit will be with them to hear that it's true.
Great.
Because I think we've had too much people trying to be in the middle where they're like, I'm just trying to appease everyone. I'm not trying to say something to stir the pot. It's too much of that. And so they haven't heard the truth.
Right.
And so I think it's really important that they hear what the truth is. And we have to trust that God is and the Holy Spirit's going to be with them for them to know that it's the truth. That's the Holy Spirit's job. Our job is to speak the truth.
I like my political wife. This is great.
I don't know what's happening to me, guys.
I love it.
She watched the
Pastor Lindsay for president.
I love it. And we're all from a church culture that believes the same thing as in regards to honor, right? Honor up, honor down, honor all around. And I don't think honor has an age limit.
Yeah.
So I don't think somebody has to get to a certain age in order for them to honor or be honored.
Right.
So if we're going to honor up, but we're also going to honor down, that includes honoring the next generation and creating space for conversation. So should we, let's take another question.
Let's go, Texas.
Yes, sir.
Yeehaw! I'm sorry, I had to.
I'll take it. Howdy. No, so obviously we're undergoing some restructuring right now on our team. So my question is, what is the biggest challenge facing a team during a restructuring? How do you navigate that? Especially in the early days, like we just, as of 2 weeks ago, kind of restructured our team, our staff.
I think everybody's just looking for a silver bullet.
Yeah.
What's the one thing we're going to do that's going to fix everything? And spoiler alert, it doesn't exist. So the children of Israel, when they were in the desert, they were given land and moved toward the promised land little by little. That's what it says, I believe in Exodus, little by little. And I think teams make progress little by little.
Great.
There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that's going to solve all the things. Every team woke up today with some kind of tension in it. Like every culture is imperfect. That we talk about a lot of stuff in these settings, but reality is everybody woke up imperfect today. And so there's no arrival. In fact, I think if you're going to be in leadership, you got to commit to you're constantly helping navigate team members through challenge. Because it's just ever present.
Yeah.
And don't look for a finish line. Maybe would be another way
That's beautiful.
to say that.
Yeah, and I think something this is just super practical, but if you're restructuring, just having clarity, just being insanely specific with what those roles look like, what the vision is, what is the heart for this restructure. I think many times we can be in leadership and we make the assumption people know where we're going, maybe they know what they're doing, but things get really lost in those gaps during those transitions, and you can't over communicate, like an extra email, an extra text, an extra meeting, just especially in those times, is really just provide clarity to the team on where you're going, why you're going that route. And then even say, hey, what did you hear? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? That way you don't want to be halfway through the finish line and then your team's still in the back because they were like, wait, what route I thought we were going this way. So part of it is really just super practical. Just give your team clarity and give them guidance, and then just bring them along the entire journey as much as you can.
So Lindsay calls me accidentally funny. She says, you're not funny, and you're accidentally funny.
Don't say that.
She said that. So I was accidentally funny yesterday in our second chair session. I asked our panel a question. The question was, beyond your job description, what do you do to add most value to your team? I thought it was a really good question. And I just happened to say, I'm assuming you have a job description. And the whole room laughed. Yeah. Which was not...
It was real.
It was not supposed to be funny. And so I don't really care if you have a list of responsibilities or not. I mean, whatever. But clarity is important.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're clear.
That's great.
I don't know that we always have that. And I think it's important to seek it.
I think too, when I've been on staff in a season of restructuring, I think it's so important to give it time.
Yeah.
Because like Brandon was referencing, so many times we change something hoping that it'll fix it instantly. And a lot of times we just need to give it time to settle. We need to give it time for people to get used to their new roles. We need to give it time for people to get uncomfortable and try new things and not be so reactive. Hopefully the restructuring that you've done was proactive to, fixing long-term solutions versus being reactive to something that maybe just happened recently. And in that way, I think just giving it time and continuing to be as proactive as you can be, and letting people with clarity and, with time come to a position of strength together in their new roles, because there's always going to be a learning curve. When you bring on a new person to your team, or when you change roles in your team. At one point, several years ago, Pastor Kevin, he took all of our jobs, and we were very kind of in lanes and in different silos, if you will. And he was really wanting us to be more collaborative. And so he said, okay, the organization chart does not exist anymore. And I'm going to give you each, I'm going to put you each on a team, and you might be on 2 or 3 teams, and each team is going to be a color, and each color is going to have a goal and a mission, and you guys are just going to pollinate and collaborate, and I just don't want any lanes to exist anymore. And it was tough for a season because we were like,
chaos.
are you doing that? Or am I doing that? Are we supposed to be talking about this? Is that in the blue team or is this in the gold team? And it was a little chaotic for a minute, but it helped us blur the lines enough in between departments to create the collaboration that we needed, so that when we did go back to a more structured organization chart with different silos and stuff like that, it wasn't actually silos. There was all these bridges and dotted lines that people could work with because of the kind of the pendulum switch, that we did with very structured to not structured and back to structured. But there was time and there was clarity after the chaos, and there was patience with each other. So I hope that's helpful.
That's beautiful. Let's take another question.
What's it like being a spouse in ministry? And how can, if you're, say for example, if one spouse is in ministry and one isn't, how can they both support each other?
Right.
Well, I'm assuming this question's pointed at me. I think about this a lot because there's so many different iterations of this that happens, right? Maybe one person volunteers more than the other person. Maybe you just had a baby, and so you're out of, everyday tasks where you were in the everyday tasks. Maybe you have 5 children, and so you're maxed, or maybe you have a full-time job that is like 60 plus hours, and so your husband's, there on staff and you're not, or maybe your wife is there on staff and you're not. There's so many different iterations. So what is the answer to that question that covers all the iterations? And I think the answer to that is communication.
Great.
Because I think when we have gotten it right is when we are doing our best to communicate to each other what it is that we need, what it is that we're doing. Like where are you going on Tuesday?
Right.
Like I need to know your schedule. I need to know, and I don't need to know every detail. And I think that leads to my second thing is knowing what you do need to know and knowing what you actually don't need to know.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times you can sit at home and wonder what's going on. And part of that is just, I've gone through jealousy. That I'm not the one doing the ministry because I'm at home with the baby, or I'm not the one that has the job that I want because I'm doing the volunteer job that I don't want to do right now, right? That's real. But I think realizing in your mind, like, what is it that I actually need in this moment, and what do I need to work through? What do I need God to help me work through? And whether it's jealousy or, loneliness, or, there's been times where I'm like, kind of resenting the fact that I said yes to him doing something. And I had to realize, like, I'm actually resenting the yes that I said. So we were good, and now I've slid in, I've kind of moved, and I'm not good. And so I that's on me, though. That's not on him. Like when we talked and he said, can I do the, does this work with the family? Does this? And I said, yes. Like he went and he did yes. And then I was like,
why'd you
this
say
isn't,
yes? Why'd you do that?
This wasn't fun. Why are you doing that when I'm doing this? Does that make sense? And so I think really protecting yourself and being, protecting yourself isn't the right way to say it. Taking care of yourself, really taking care of your mental health. I know that's such a buzzword, but you have to take care of your mental health. So if you are not going in the right direction, you have to get some help. You have to talk to somebody. You can't sit in the dark on it. The worst thing is when I sit at home crying by myself. That's the worst thing I could do. Talk to a friend about it, because they're going to have a much better perspective. And they're going to help. You have to have friends around you that are going to remind you of your yes, remind you of your why. My friends know, my good friends know what we are called to do. They know what we're trying to do, and they know that sometimes it's hard. But they're going to help me remember why we said yes. They're going to bring me back to that. And that's a very specific, sometimes I'm sitting at home and he's having a great time in the sun and it looks like this here. And I have to remember why we said yes, And I think too, the other thing that I'll say, and then I'll be done, is seasons are so important.
Yeah.
And knowing that, like, I think, like, in parenting, when you have a newborn and you're up all night and it's like you feel like you're never going to sleep again.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like we will never sleep a night again.
I feel that deep in my
and
soul.
it's like you do not see the end because you just never see it, right? But you got out of that season, hopefully. At some point you sleep again. And I think so remembering, like, when you're in a hard season, that this is a season.
Great.
And, it's I think for me at least, it's easier to buckle down and get through a season if I know that this is a season God's gonna do something new and fresh.
Yeah.
And you got to be looking for that and waiting for it, but also, like, enjoy the season where you're at. There's always something that he's doing in you in that season. So,
Pastor Lindsay, you said it at camp, the last leading second camp. You said God doesn't call people, he calls families.
Great.
And I think when we talk about doing ministry, like, you and your spouse, what you do in ministry may not look the same. God has called your spouse to do something specific. God has called you to do something specific, but God would not call you to do something without your spouse. And I think part of that is, it's just having that understanding. Are you both submitted under the leadership of your house? Are you both supportive of the vision of your house?
Right.
And those are the questions that you have to ask your spouse and ask yourself as you continue to move forward. One of you may be moving forward more quickly. One of you may be like, hey, I'm cool with what I'm at, but I support you. And it's just having that understanding that no matter what you're doing, you're still doing it together. Like, it's not... God isn't like, hey, Dillon, I'm just going to call you. No, he's saying, hey, I'm going to call your family. And then it's having that communication to know, hey, we're going to do this together. And it's going to look different for each of us, but none of us is going to get left behind. And I do think one of the conversations we have a lot with the couples at our church is, don't leave your spouse behind.
Yep.
Like, if your spouse is not doing what you're doing, don't leave them behind. Don't forget about them. Bring them in on the journeys. Include them as much as you can so that they know, like, this is not just your show. This is something that God is trying to do in your whole home and your family with all of the people that are there.
yeah, we talk about alignment with our pastor all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a huge thing. It is, like, number one, right? You have to have alignment with your spouse.
Yep.
And that alignment with your spouse has to line up with the alignment of your pastor.
Yep.
So, like, that is something that is like it's not a moving target, but it's like a living organism.
Yep.
So you don't just set your alignment and go, okay, we're aligned, and never talk about it again. And never check in again.
Right.
Just like how, like, you could maybe get frustrated with your pastor, you could get frustrated with your spouse.
Yeah.
You have to keep checking that alignment.
Right. Yep.
And that, especially for couples that are in ministry, because we're going so fast and we're doing and we're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
It's very important what we're doing, but if your family isn't coming along with you, then what is it for?
Yep.
So that it's so important.
Yes.
When we hire people, we do 2 interviews solo, and then we interview them with their spouse.
It's great.
Because we want to make sure that their spouse is hearing our heart.
Yes.
Coming on staff. Like, we're not stealing your husband, we're not stealing your wife. Like, we're hiring your family, you know? And then the other thing is just, if the enemy can't get the man of God or the woman of God who is in, vocational full-time ministry, he'll go after the spouse.
Right. Yep.
And that's why it's so important for that alignment, like you said, with the pastor, and then also that alignment with the spouse. Don't take it for granted, and don't underestimate the power of it.
That's right.
That's beautiful. Let's go to the next question.
Yeah, I would love for you just to talk about, as executive staff, pastors on staff, our team, at least in our setting, is primarily volunteers, even in some key roles in the church. So I'd love to hear you talk about how you entrust, how you empower, how you kind of share the weight and share the keys with people who are literally working 9-to-5s, raising families, when ultimately the buck normally stops with you guys as executive staff members.
Yeah.
It's great.
Can I
Absolutely.
say something
Yeah.
first? I'm so glad you asked this, because it's so important in ministry we get a view for leadership that goes beyond the paychecks.
Yep.
Just to remind us of historical and biblical context, the idea of paid staff in ministry is a recent concept and a Western concept. The vast majority of church leaders in the world are volunteer, and some today would potentially even give their life to be in ministry. I know that's very dramatic, and I know that it's very serious. It is also the truth. that we who are blessed and fortunate enough to be compensated in ministry, we get paid, just being real, with tithers' money to do what some people will give their life to do. So I don't say that to shame us. I'm 23 years. My livelihood has been derived from full-time ministry, so I get it. But I think it shows us that leadership and ownership of God's house are not tied to a paycheck. Now, a paycheck provides someone the opportunity to focus full-time. That's all
great.
a paycheck means. It means I'm not going to work somewhere else today. It does not mean spiritual authority. It does not mean discipleship. It does not mean leadership capacity. It means none of that. It just means you didn't also go work somewhere else. So I think if we can tear those ideas apart, now we can get an idea for leadership, like you're alluding to, an idea for leadership that disconnects from the paycheck. Does that make sense? To us? And I think we have to develop that conviction because quite frankly, the largest churches out there cannot pay every leader they need. No one can pay every leader they need. So we have to develop a view. Okay, there's my TED Talk. Now,
I love
Dillon, you have something to say.
I love what Pastor Kevin and Pastor Sheila were talking about yesterday, this volunteer spirit. That you need to keep a volunteer spirit even when you get on staff. Because immediately when we get on staff, we start setting boundaries. And we didn't have those boundaries when we were volunteer leaders. If the church lights were on, me and my wife were there. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I work 40 hours a week for the church. And it's like, since when? Since when did we create these boundaries? Like, where was that in the conversation when we were onboarding onto staff? It was like, if we're going to ask people to work 40 hours a week, and then we're going to ask them to volunteer on the weekends or volunteer for an outreach event, like, you best believe that I'm going to do my 40 hours, and then I'm going to be at the outreach event. I'm going to be there for multiple services. I'm going to serve heart and soul the way that I did because it was my volunteer spirit that God raised me up from. And God has the ability to raise up, and God has the ability to remove. And I believe it's a volunteer spirit, losing one and having one, that will dictate whether or not God will continue to use you.
So to provide a practical answer to your great question, Paul said to the Corinthian church, each should give what they've decided in their heart to give. Not reluctantly, not under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So now he's referring to money, but let's use time as a resource. Let's insert time into there. Each should give what they've decided in their heart to give. So be clear what you're asking someone to do. Are you asking them to be the youth director volunteer? That's a big role. Or are you asking them to lead a team? So be clear and let them say yes. Go back to what Lindsay said. Let their yes be yes and their no be no. Let them say yes. Don't feel bashful. Ask them. If you see it, don't worry about their job. They'll figure it out. Don't worry about, they'll tell you, but give them a chance and let them say yes or no. Now, each should give what they've decided in their heart to give, not reluctantly. So we should be joyful about contributing to God's house, even as volunteer. Pastor Jodi and I are, there's others that are volunteer up here, but we're volunteer staff, and I've been volunteer staff for I think 13 years, longer than I was paid staff. So not reluctantly, but then also not under compulsion. We shouldn't twist their arms. If it's a no, it's a no. So not under compulsion. If they say this does not work for me in this season, then it's a no. And we don't twist their arm, and we don't, treat them poorly. Because God loves a cheerful giver. I think if we can follow some of those principles in there, you're going to have joy.
That's great.
Cheerful giving in the volunteer staff, the volunteer leadership team. I just hate the word staff. I think it's an unhelpful word, honestly. I don't think we should use it because it creates a barrier that doesn't really need to exist. If you're referring to leaders, just call it your leadership team.
That's great.
And then now we've leveled the playing field. Some of us are compensated, some of us are not, but we're all on the leadership team.
And I just want to add, Pastor Brandon, I think when we're leading so many volunteers, so much of what we're asking to do is dependent on how we ask. Our language matters. If we ask someone to do something and we're asking them to do us a favor, they're going to treat it like they're doing us a favor. And building God's house is not a favor. Like, God has called me, who may be a staff volunteer, to build his house just as much as he has called someone who is not a staff volunteer to build his house. So I think as leaders, to really create that culture is, hey, you're not doing me a favor. Like, yes, I'm so thankful. I'm appreciative of the work that you're going to put of your time, but we're doing what the Bible has instructed us to do. And the church of God is going to get built no matter what, whether we say yes, whether we volunteer or not. Like, God is going to move and it's going to get done. So we really have to have that mindset of, hey, like, this is something we get to add value to. We get to be a part of it. It's not, hey, do you want to do this favor and paint the fence? I'm going to go back to the fence. Paint the fence, everybody. Paint the fence.
One of the worst statements you can make in leadership is, hey, would you do me a favor?
Yeah. Hey, this is an
Because now
opportunity
you've redirected the focus onto, will you do this for me instead of will you do this for the Lord?
Or that we need you.
Yeah, we need. That's a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
Where need is not part of our vocabulary. It's, hey, we have this beautiful opportunity for you to be a part of building God's house. And then the other thing I want to say, and now this is to leaders, as you're leading volunteers, this is the tension that I'm always in. I have all these hours in my day. This is my job. This is my role. I need to make sure I do this. My emergencies cannot become someone else's emergency. If I drop the ball, I should not be reaching out to my volunteer that's working 40 hours a week saying, hey, I need this like in 2 minutes. We have to take the ownership of setting the right boundaries with our volunteers. And you have to find the tension like, hey, this is what you've agreed to do. These are the expectations as a director, as a coordinator, as a team lead. I understand you have this full-time job, a family, but this is what we agreed to. So you have to find the tension of, this is what you've agreed to do, but then also, hey, I need to honor those boundaries. I need to set boundaries. Like, maybe at lunchtime is the time that works for you, but maybe 9 o'clock, you're always in meetings. And I'm like, hey, I need this, and that. So we've got to find that balance of how do we navigate leading volunteers, but also just making sure that we're not just dumping and expecting them to do all that we're actually supposed to do as well.
Great. Really quick practical step. Everybody wears the same name tag on Sunday morning at our church. Because what that communicates to everybody is we're all here serving together. So just a practical way for you to be able to do that. We'll take one more question.
We come to Team Church. I think there's an underlining theme this year after hearing Pastor Jabin, hearing Pastor Kevin's heart. We think 3, Pastor Jabin jumping up there and just like committed to the next generation. What happens? Where does the conversation go from here? Second chair leader to a lead pastor that maybe is going back to a church that hasn't been a priority.
That's great.
And now you're on fire, like I'm ready to reach the next generation, but it's been stagnant for a while. And now there's this tension of like something's burning inside of you. Maybe it has been. Where does the conversation start? How does that conversation unfold so that we can reach the next generation, guard the goose, and pass it down?
You know, you're under authority, but you're not powerless here. So I think, first of all, it's not helpful to go to a pastor and just say, we need to do more to reach the next generation. We're not doing enough. You know, that kind of conversation's not going to be helpful. And I think be charitable to your pastor. They've got a lot of priority. They've got a lot going on. Don't assume they don't want to.
Yeah.
Just assume maybe there's not a strategy for it. Maybe there's some sort of gap we can fill. So to me, I wonder what it would look like to sit down and architect a plan, but not just a plan of how you'd like to reach the next generation, but a plan for how does the vision of our house translate into reaching.
Yeah.
Because if you can connect some of those dots and provide some solutions, I can't imagine a pastor in the world that wouldn't love to sit down and have a conversation saying, I'd love to do more. I think our house could be more effective in, but then also keeping it submitted. I realize, Pastor, you've got a lot of priorities, so I submit this to you.
Great.
And you tell me how this works into the plan. If you come in humbly and you come in with solutions, I can't imagine a pastor being adversarial. I can see them really welcoming and say, thank you for helping me fill some gaps here and connect some dots. And I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but Team Church Conference is supposed to be a catalyst.
Right.
It's supposed to be a catalyst for the next season. So what we've done here is we've started a conversation that you need to continue with your lead pastor. Like, hey, pastor, what did you think about when Pastor Jabin says we need to be a house for the next generation? Like, how do you feel like that fits into your vision? Because if we come here and we receive for 3 days, but nothing changes in our churches, then we need to seriously reconsider the reason why we're here. And we need to change our posture next year, because this should be the start of something. We put this on our calendar as a church every year because we know that out of these 3 days, God wants to do something in the next season. And if we don't continue the conversation that started here in Tacoma, then I don't know that we've done this opportunity justice.
And I think this is also something just super practical, but I'm going to go there. Money talks. We're saying these are the priorities. Where are we allocating that in our budget? You know, if this is what we want to focus on, I think we felt a lot of conviction where we're like, hey, we want to care for our serve team. They're the ones that are making it happen. And then we were looking at our budget and we were like, this is how much we've allocated for our serve team, but then we've tripled it for a first-time guest. And we've had to really look at like, hey, when we're looking at our budgets, as we plan, this is the catalyst. So we're going to start planning on how can we reach that? How can we move forward in that vision? When we're looking at our budgets, like, don't wait till you're already 2 months out saying, I need, like, hey, if we're going to reach the next generation, what do we need? How do we allocate that? How do we prioritize what it is that we want to do? Is our budget aligned with the vision?
So can I just add one more thing? Just as a practical example, starting with what you have, where you are, that's under alignment with your pastor. Our youth pastor, Pastor Jonathan, he wanted to have a youth camp for years. We grew up with a kids camp and a youth camp, and then we had this gap of time where we didn't do youth camp, and we did youth conference, and that's kind of actually where Team Church Conference was born out of, because we were doing a youth conference in the summer, and then we started having church leaders come and youth pastors come, and they're like, we should just make this a whole thing, right? So then Pastor Jonathan just had this thing in his heart about having a youth camp. So I'm going to tell you a short story. It's longer, but I'll tell you the brief version. And I just want you to extract the principles out of it. So he wanted to have a youth camp. Pastor Kevin wasn't ready. It wasn't the right timing. So he said, if you can make it happen with 30 handpicked leaders, then you can go and do it. And he got a spot for free out in the mountains. One of our church members has hundreds of acres, so we didn't have to pay for a venue. He got all the food donated. He got people, so it was no cost to the church.
This is like tents.
Tents, like actual camping.
Tents,
and so he
camping.
did that. 30 leaders the first year.
Wow.
45 leaders the next year. 60 leaders the third year, and every year he kept coming back, Pastor, can we do a youth camp? I think it was like 6 or 7 years of him asking Pastor Kevin, please, can we do this? But he just kept staying faithful. No cost to the church, gotten volunteers involved, and sowing into hand-picked leaders.
Yes.
And so when it did come time to do a youth camp, and Pastor Kevin was like, yep, I think it's time, we not only had the leaders to do it, because they had been being invested in for 6-7 years on these yearly and these annual summer camps. Now we also had the resources. All these the venue was still available for free. The people now had this in their schedule of volunteering, making the food, doing all the things, and it just created a cycle now that we can have a youth camp.
He was trustworthy of the investment to move it forward.
Churches are involved, but it started because Pastor Jonathan was like, okay, you're telling me no, so what can I do with what I have where I am and make it, and sow into it and create that legacy of good things to happen.
I love it. What an incredible conversation. Continue to have the conversation in your churches with your pastors. We hope that today's conversation has become a catalyst for what God wants to do through you and your church in the future. Thanks for joining us today, and until next time, we love you guys. Keep leading strong in the second chair.
It is our honor to serve churches and leaders across the globe. We equip ministry leaders with the coaching, events, and resources needed to embrace their calling, get it right with their pastor, and lead in an uncommon way. Visit our website, leadingsecond.com, to learn how we can come alongside you as you lead from the middle, from the second chair, for the second chair.